Hello and welcome back. We are now ready to start actually moving the clip, and to do that, we're going to give our weapon its own animation blueprint. And then we can access and modify the transform of certain bones from within the anim graph for that blueprint. So let's go back and we can go into our weapons folder and double click base weapon. And we're going to create an animation blueprint right here. So we're going to right click and go to animation and create animation blueprint. Now, if you're using the gun from the GitHub account, you're going to use the skeleton for the gun skeletal mesh. Now, because this is for our gun actually has the Bellica skeleton as its skeleton. Remember, our gun is actually the Bellica mesh, and we've set all the elements of that mesh to transparent in their materials except for the guns. So for the skeleton, we're going to select Bellica skeleton, and that's this skeleton right here. Now, don't select a parent class. We're going to leave that unselected, and we're going to click OK. And we're going to name this SMG Anim BP, so this will work for our SMG. So open up this, and we're going to go straight to our event graph here. Now, for this animation blueprint, we need a few variables. We're going to want a reference to the shooter character. So let's start adding some variables here. So down here in the My Blueprint tab, we're going to create a variable, and we're going to call this shooter character. Now this needs to be of type shooter character BP. That's an object reference. Now we're also going to want a variable to know when we should be moving the clip. So just like we have for the weapon class, for this animation blueprint, we're going to add a Boolean called moving clip. And this will be a Boolean variable. Now we're also going to want a transform so we can know the hand scene component transform. So we're going to add another variable, and we're going to call this one hand scene comp transform. That's the transform for the hand scene component, and this will be of type transform. So set the variable type to transform. And then finally, we're going to add another variable for our owning weapon. So we're going to call this owning weapon. And this variable is going to be of type base weapon BP. So make this a base weapon BP object reference. And this will be a reference to the owning weapon, the weapon that's using this animation blueprint. So this way we'll have a few references here. We're going to have a reference to the shooter character. We're going to have a Boolean to know when we're supposed to be moving the clip here in the animation blueprint. And we have a transform variable so that we can know that hand scene component transform. We're going to be accessing the shooter character to get that scene component so we can get its transform. And finally, we're going to have a reference to the owning weapon. Now here in event blueprint update animation, this behaves similarly to the tick function. It gets called every frame. And we're going to want to go ahead and get our reference to the shooter character. So we're going to say shooter character, we're going to get that, and we're going to see if it's valid. So we're going to use an isValid node. And of course, the first time it's not going to be valid. So we're going to need to do something here on the isNotValid section. So if it's not valid, we can easily get the player pawn using getPlayerPawn. And this will return us the pawn which we can cast to shooter character. So cast to shooter character. We're going to use cast to shooter character BP, of course, so we can connect isNotValid to cast to shooter character. Now from here, what we want to do is set our shooter character variable. So this SMG AnimBP has a shooter character variable. We want to set that after we've casted the result of getPlayerPawn. So now we will actually have a valid shooter character reference. That's all we want to do if shooter character is not valid. We simply want to get the shooter character. So I'm going to highlight this and put a comment and say get the shooter character. And we'll stick that down there. Now, in the case where shooter character is valid, which should be every frame after this one, after we've set it for the first time, Now it should be valid from here on out, every frame after this. Now we're ready to get some information from the shooter character. Okay, so one thing we want to do is we want to get the shooter character. From the shooter character, we want to get our hand scene component. So we're going to type in hand scene component, and we're going to get that hand scene component. This is that component that we attach to the character's hand bone as soon as we start grabbing the clip. Now, as soon as we have our hand scene component, we can use a node called getWorldTransform. And this gets us the transform of the scene component. And once we get that scene component's transform, we can now update this hand scene component transform variable that we have here on our animation blueprint for the SMG. So we're going to set hand scene comp transform. We're going to set that equal to the hand scene component transform that we're getting from the character. So every frame, we're updating this variable that we have on this animation blueprint with the transform that we're getting from the hand scene component on the character class. So here we can give this a comment and we can say update the hand scene component transform. So now we have this transform that holds the information that we're getting from the shooter character's hand scene component. So now we have that information. Next, we want to update our moving clip variable, this Boolean here that we have that will let us know when we should be moving the clip. Now we can get that from the weapon. Now, since we have an owning weapon variable here, I'm going to drag this out and get it. This is of type base weapon BP. This is an object reference for the base weapon BP. Now, of course, it's not valid. It doesn't have any information stored in it, but we can check to see if it's valid each frame. And of course, the first time it's not going to be valid, so we're going to need to set it. And the way we can get this owning weapon is there's a handy function called getOwningActor. GetOwningActor is a node that returns an actor that is the actor that owns this animation blueprint. So in our case, it's going to be the base weapon BP. So we can get this and we can cast it to base weapon BP, and we're going to hook up the isNotValid execution wire to this. And as base weapon BP, we can set our owning weapon object reference. So we're going to set owning weapon equal to that. And then the next frame, it should be valid, so it should work. Now, once we've set owning weapon, what we want to do is we want to get the base weapon BP and get that inherited Boolean value called moving clip. Now, if you search for it here, you're not going to find it. And that's because we didn't make this exposed to blueprints. So we need to actually do that. So here in weapon.h, here's B moving clip, and we want to make this exposed to blueprints. So we need to give it a uProperty macro. Now we're only going to set this from C++. We don't want to be able to set it from blueprints. We only want to get it. So we can make this visible anywhere and blueprint read only. Now I'm just going to give it the category of weapon properties and the same meta specifier as all the other variables, and then we can compile this. Okay, so once that's compiled, we can hop back in the editor, and here in the editor, we can drag off of our owning weapon, and we can get that moving clip variable, B moving clip, and we can set our moving clip variable here on the animation blueprint equal to that Boolean value. Now this is only in the is not valid section, so we can comment this and say get reference to owning base weapon BP, and I guess we can add to this comment and say and set our moving clip bool. And then here in the case where it is valid, we need to update that Boolean. So we're going to set moving clip, and we're going to set it equal to the owning weapons moving clip value. So moving clip, we're going to get moving clip from our owning weapon, set our moving clip value on our variable here on the animation blueprint. So I'll just give this a comment and say update moving clip bool. Okay, so here in the animation blueprint, we're doing several things. First, we're checking to see if our shooter character reference is valid, and if it's not, we're getting it by using getPlayerPawn, casting the shooter character BP, and setting our shooter character reference here. After that, we're going to update our handSceneComp transform variable. This is the transform variable that we created here on our SMG AnimBP. We're going to get that from our shooter character, and from the shooter character we get the hand scene component and calling getWorldTransform on it, and then we're setting our hand scene component. From there, we're checking to see if our owning weapon is valid, and if it is, then we simply update our moving clip boolean by getting that moving clip variable inherited from weapon.h from owning weapon. But if owning weapon is not valid, we need to call getOwningActor, cast it to base weapon BP, and then set owning weapon. From there, we get our owning weapon's moving clip boolean and update our moving clip boolean here on the animation blueprint. Okay, so that takes care of updating all of our animation blueprint variables, which we do here with event blueprint update animation. So we've got these 4 variables we've created. In the next video, we're going to actually use these variables to move that clip. So we'll see you in the next video.